Hello and welcome to a special edition of the POA podcast. In this toolkit episode, we're going to be looking at the union's campaigning work supporting women members going through the menopause. We will hear later from POA NEC member Jackie Marshall, but first I asked the TUC's lead officer on gender issues, Nikki Pound, about why the menopause has become a key issue for all unions.
I think there's a variety of factors. I think one thing is that trade unions have been leading the way on developing evidence around the impact of menopause in the workplace. So, for example, the TUC, Wales TUC, they did some research back in 2017-18 around the impact of menopause in the workplace and sort of found that, I think it was something like 90% of the women who responded to that survey said that menopause was either impacting them directly at work or they were experiencing an impact through their colleagues who they were supporting. And so seeing it in the workplace and more people starting to talk about it, and also the way that menopause has been treated in the workplace previously has either been don't talk about it, a lot of stigma around it, taboo, or making jokes about it, you know, oh, someone's emotional, oh, hot flushes and stuff like that, and really making women feel quite uncomfortable about being able to come forward and talk about their symptoms. And I think, again, I know affiliates, including POA, have themselves done lots of research in the impact of menopause in their workplaces and their sectors, because, again, the circumstances of, you know, whether you work in an office or whether you're working in a prison or in a school or in the health service or in a retail setting, like that can all affect the different ways you experience support and the way that your symptoms can be exacerbated. But I also think there's lots of women in the workforce who are going through menopause. You know, women are working longer, more women are in the workforce than ever before. The age at which women experience typically menopause, sort of 45 to 55, that population is one of the fastest growing segments of the labour market. So I think, you know, it is a very live issue for women in the workplace.
And what are the TUC's campaigning objectives in this area?
Our key campaigning objective is to continue to raise awareness of the issues and how it impacts women, and also ensuring that every workplace has a workplace policy around menopause that's sector specific and looks at the different factors that will affect people in the workplace, making sure there's good guidance out there, good practice, so things like model policies, things like example risk assessments, because that's really important that we see this as part of the broader health and safety agenda and not just a women's issue. It is part of the broader health and safety agenda, and it is really important that employers are looking at things like risk assessments, specifically around the menopause, and making sure that they're talking to someone who's going through it and their trade union reps. And looking at the ways in which they can make the workplace more enabling and supportive. Like we know from research from Bupa last year and then Newson Health and Wellbeing Centre, they reckon around about 1 million women have been forced out of the labour market because of the lack of support during menopause. So we really need to our campaigning is focusing on getting workplaces in a more supportive environment for anyone experiencing menopause. And I think as well, making employers aware of what legislation already exists under which they have duties, like the Health and Safety Act, the Equality Act. If you're a public sector organisation, the Public Sector Equality Duty, there's lots of legislation out there that says, you know, you do really have to support women at work with any of their health issues.
Thanks very much, Nikki. NEC member Jackie Marshall now tells us about the work being done by the POA to secure reasonable adjustments in the workplace and just how the employer is responding.
It's an issue because a lot of our members can't have the adjustments made for them that, say, office staff could have. You know, if they're going through the hot flushes and things where you could have a fan there or open a window, we can't have, female staff can't carry a fan around with them. And on a lot of the wings, there's no windows to open.
What does the union want to see by way of the response from management?
Well, there's a new policy coming out which we're just starting to consult on. We're looking at adjusting perhaps some types of uniform, because that is obviously another issue as well, where, you know, there's a given uniform, we have to wear that uniform and there's no alterations to that uniform. Whereas if you're in an office job, you could probably change your attire appropriately. So it's just looking at what we can do for our female members of staff. It's like access to toilet facilities in some of our prisons, especially the old Victorian ones. Men and women have to share the toilets in there. Or we've got prisons where you can't take your bag onto the wings with you. So if you need, to change your products, then you've got to go off the wing. If you don't, you're in your handbag. If your handbag's on the wing, you're trying to sneak something out to protect your dignity. And it's just really difficult sometimes for women.
Okay, what's the response been from HMPPS?
Well, they are taking on board what we're saying. We are working closely with their menopause lead. But previous to this work, I did write to the prison service and ask about having products available in all female toilets. And that was somewhat way to do with the period poverty campaign that the TUC were running at the time. But I suppose it serves both purposes, really. And I explained to them about having to leave the wing, to get something, or trying to sneak something out your handbag. And I got an email back to say it was a security issue. So I'm not really sure how it's a security issue, because I've not known anybody to be stabbed with a tampon or, cut with a sanitary towel.
So management still have some way to go before they get to the same level of understanding as yourself and the POA's members?
Oh, yes, definitely. There is some way to go. But they are trying, the leads for the menopause, they are trying, and they are working with us, and they have taken some of our suggestions on board.
And it's not just the POA that's seeing this as an issue, is it? You moved a motion at the TUC Women's Conference recently.
Yes, I did, and that was linked to the fitness test. So anybody who joined the prison service after April 1st, 2001 is required to complete a fitness test. Now, obviously, as women get older and they're entering into the menopause stage, they're having all sorts of things happening to their bodies. And there was no adjustments at all for women going through the menopause. So the only adjustments that were put in for the fitness test at first, they said women going through the menopause, they would push the fitness test back by 2 weeks. Well, that would be lovely if the menopause only lasted 2 weeks. So it's currently at 6 months. They've pushed it back. But even that's not good enough when, statistics show that the average menopause lasts about 7.5 years. And albeit small numbers, those who've failed the fitness test 3 times and have either been dismissed or regraded are all women.
So other unions were supportive of the POA's position at the TUC's Women Conference, which must have been reassuring. What's the next stage in the campaign?
We want menopause champions in all establishments. The POA do. So that's not necessarily POA reps, but I would have to be the member of the POA. And we're looking at putting training on for menopause champions. We've got 2 pilots running at the moment. Well, the department have got 2 pilots running, one at Warren Hill and one at Little Hay, where they've just started there, and they've got training for managers and all sorts of stuff that they're planning to do. So that's really positive.
And if the pilots prove successful, will that lead to a rollout across the entire estate?
Yes, it will.
People listening to this might think that the menopause is just an issue for the union's female members, but it's an issue for the men as well, isn't it?
Well, could you tell me a man who suffered through the menopause and then tell me a woman who hasn't suffered through the menopause?
No, you can't. So therefore, the members who are men should be just as vocal in campaigning for menopause champions in the estate as women.
Definitely that. And I think in one of the pilot prisons, somebody who's come forward as a menopause champion is actually a male officer, which is, it's really promising, that is.
But of course, if there are not reasonable adjustments for women members who are going through the menopause, that has operational consequences, doesn't it, as well?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Because some women at times have had to take time off work because the symptoms are so bad and there's no reasonable adjustments made for them. And because our staffing and our safety depends on numbers.
My thanks to Nikki and to Jackie. Don't miss the featured article on the menopause in April's Gatelodge, and keep up to date with all of the union's campaigning work at poauk.org.uk.